UFC looks to kick off their 2023 schedule this Saturday with UFC Fight Night 217, Imavov versus Strickland. I almost said Gastelum. I'm still kind of salty that Gastelum had to pull out. I'm a fan. But you know what? Honestly, I'm a bigger fan of Strickland, and I'm a bigger fan of this main event this year, kicking off January with prelim opener of Priscila Cachoeira versus Sijara Eubanks at women's bantamweight. And honestly, I'm not looking forward to that fight. Sijara Eubanks' 7-7 record. Priscila Cachoeira with a more reasonable 12-4 record, coming off of a 2-fight win streak and a first-round finish in like a minute over somebody I thought was going to whoop her ass in her last fight. So she's riding some momentum. She's building it. And Sijara Eubanks, on the other hand, you know, she's had ups and downs in her career. And honestly, I just can't see her making it past the journeyman status that she's at currently. Like, just being realistic. If she showed up with her mind completely right and her conditioning on point, I would pick Sijara pretty much every day of the week in this fight. But I just don't see that being the case, and I usually tend to side with the fighter that has momentum on the side. So, that being said, I'm going with Priscila Cachoeira, 29-28 UD, maybe a split decision. You know how the judging be these days. And honestly, it's not going to be that entertaining of a fight, I'd imagine. But yeah, moving on up the card. All right, now moving up the card, we got Charles Johnson taking on Jimmy Flick at flyweight. And this is a return fight for Jimmy Flick off of his retirement. Like most MMA fighters, he claimed he was retiring in 2020, but got the itch or something. Maybe he needs to make money. I don't fucking know. Misses it. So now he's coming back, and he retired on the brink of a 4-fight win streak, or 5, I don't remember which, but I know it was all finishes, and it was all submissions, and that's pretty impressive. Charles Johnson, on the other hand, is coming off of a split decision win over Zhalgas Zhumagulov, and it was really, really close. Like, that fight was up in the air, and right before that, he was getting tossed around by Muhammad Mokaev. On paper, Charles Johnson is going to win this fight. You know, he's the weight bully of the two. Weight bully in general for flyweight, to be honest. He's a big boy. He has the grappling heavy background. He's more battle tested than Jimmy Flick for sure. But I don't know. I still want to go with Jimmy Flick in this one. This is going to be my first underdog pick of the card. But yeah, I'm going with Jimmy Flick. I'm just more confident that when it gets into weird, awkward scrambles and situations that are going to be off of breaks, situations off of clinches, scrambles, off of somebody getting rocked or dropped or hurt, I just feel like Jimmy Flick is going to be better in that department almost everywhere. Charles Johnson is definitely more athletic. He's more of a physical specimen. He's probably stronger. But I don't think he has enough of what it takes to get Jimmy Flick out of there. I think if anybody's going to get a finish, it's going to be Jimmy Flick. And I'm really, really leaning towards late second or third round submission off of some weird, awkward scramble. Maybe off his back. I don't know. Maybe from the back, like an armbar from back take or rear naked. I don't know. But I can just see him getting that finish out of fucking thin air and extending that streak. So I'm going with Jimmy Flick by sub. Moving on up the card. My favorite fight of the prelims, to be honest. Dan Argueta is taking on newcomer Nick Aguirre. Argueta, you guys may remember his appearance from The Ultimate Fighter. He was on the last season, or the season before last, sorry. I didn't watch last season because that shit looked boring. But Dan was pretty good. He's a athletic bantamweight, I believe. And I know this fight's taking place at featherweight, but that's because it's on short notice. I'm pretty sure, like, naturally Dan Argueta is a bantamweight. I don't know if he's going to continue moving forward in the featherweight division because I know this is his second fight there in the UFC now after this one takes place. But I don't know. On the other hand, I see a lot of parallels between this debut for Nick Aguirre and Argueta's debut against Damon Jackson. Fuck, I always want to call him Matt Damon. But Damon Jackson, you know, being the seasoned vet he was, welcomed Dan Argueta on short notice because Damon Jackson's opponent pulled out last minute. So Dan Argueta comes in, is expected to get dominated. I remember the odds were something fucking absurd for that fight. And it was basically that. It was ground domination for Damon Jackson. But in the third round, he gassed. And I don't think he expected Dan to have that dog in him. And Dan started beating his ass in the last round. If it was a 5-round fight, Dan would have won it. So he got a lot of battle experience. He got battle tested in that fight. I should say that. That sounds a lot better. He got battle tested. And Nick Aguirre, you know, the similarities here is that he's stepping up on short notice and he's coming in to take on Argueta. Undefeated, just like Argueta was. All finishes. I don't know if Argueta had that, but this guy's coming off all finishes. And a fun fact, he's the number one ranked amateur fighter in all of Indiana. So he's going to have that, like, all on his back. Plus that confidence that comes with being undefeated, all finishes. You know, he's not nearly as battle tested, but he's wiped out his regional circuit. And if this wasn't a short notice fight, I'd be picking him confidently, to be honest. I like Nick's style. I like the way that he scrambles. I like his jiu-jitsu. I think he probably has better grappling when it comes to jiu-jitsu than Argueta even. But the wrestling definitely goes to Argueta. The physicality goes to Argueta. The strength in resume goes to Argueta for sure. So it's really hard to pick against him, and I think the odds reflect that because it's like a negative. It's like a minus 600 right now for Argueta, which is fucking absurd. It makes it almost a crime to not bet money on Aguirre. And I'm so close. I was so close to picking the underdog on this, but you know, I've been going back and forth, and I think I'm gonna have to lean towards Dan Argueta now, just getting it done with dominant decision, or maybe like wearing him down. You know, he's new to the octagon, so you just break him down, fucking TKO, late sub. I don't know, grappling heavy. There's a lot of variables here. I think if Nick shows up mentally just ready to die in there and put it all out there, I think he could shine and we could see, you know, a new upcoming prospect in the featherweight division. But I don't know. I think I just need to lean towards the safe bet for this one. So I'm going to hedge my bets, and I'm going with Argueta, either by decision, dominant decision, or a late round finish off the pressure. All right, now moving up the prelims, back to flyweight. We've got Allan Nascimento taking on Carlos Hernandez, and I'm excited for this fight. I mean, I love flyweight fights in general. Like I said before, they're like Dragon Ball fights. And we've got another classic Charles Oliveira type of fighter, in the sense that he's Brazilian and he has frosted tips, newly frosted tips. And it seems that since he's dyed his hair, he's become a new fighter. He's going on a roll. He just took out another flyweight prospect in Jake Hadley, which honestly caught me off guard. I definitely picked Hadley for that bout. But yeah, no, I don't know. It's something with these Blonzilians. Like, they just come in and they have Super Saiyan powers, dead ass. That being said, though, he's taking on Carlos Hernandez, and I felt like Hernandez looked really good in his debut. It was an 8 out of 10 debut, in my opinion. He took on Victor Altamirano, and he won a close decision, but it was a high-paced fight, and, you know, he got to show a lot of his striking technique. He got to show his footwork. He got to show, you know, what he's bringing into the octagon so far on his baby-ass career, because, you know, I think he's 7-0, 8-0, 8-1, some shit like that. So he's just now getting up there. And I really think that Allan Nascimento would have to fight a perfect fight in order to beat him. I think if he's going to build off that Jake Hadley performance, he's going to need to be perfect every round, all 3 rounds. And to be fair, if I do see a finish happening in this fight, it's definitely going to be Allan Nascimento. But I just don't see it happening. I don't see him being on perfect form, and I feel like Hernandez is going to show that he's that new breed of flyweight coming up. So I'm going with Hernandez, and I'm going by a 29-28 or even a 30-27 UD. Now going back up to bantamweight from flyweight, it seems like we've got a lot of the lower weight classes here in this card, in this fight night, and I'm thankful for that. I fuck with those fights a lot more than I do with like a middleweight or a light heavyweight fight. The technique and the speed and I don't know. I just feel like it's way more high-paced action majority of the time. But yeah, no, back to bantamweight, we've got Javid Basharat taking on Matuesz Mendonca. I'm sorry if I just butchered your last name. Both undefeated, 13-0 for Javid, 10-0 for Matuesz. And, you know, in these somebody's always got to go fight, I don't know, I feel like it's usually pretty obvious who between the undefeated prospects is the more tested of the two, is the better of the two, just outright on paper, and that's definitely Javid Basharat. I honestly am surprised that he's taking on a newcomer right now, because it seemed like with the wins that he's picked up in the UFC so far, that he was just going to be climbing that bantamweight ladder like quickly. He seems very, very talented. Not even seems talented. He is very, very talented, and I definitely see him getting the finish or a dominant decision in this fight. I just feel like Matuesz is, You know, I believe it's a short notice bout. I don't know for sure, so someone could correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But I just think that he's taking on too much for his debut, and yeah, I just think Javid is the future of bantamweight. He's definitely going to be a prospect to look out for later in the year. So I'm going with Javid by early finish or a dominant decision. Now, up into the lightweight division, we've got two debuting fighters. First off, we've got Matuesz Rebecki. I don't know how to pronounce that shit. But Matuesz Rebecki, we got another Matuesz, 16-1. Looks to take on Nick Fiore, 6-0. This is going to be a good fight. It's going to be a scrap. Nick Fiore has all finishes. Rebecki is a striker. And I don't see this fight going past the second round, honestly. These are, especially for Matuesz, he is a fucking jacked lightweight. He's a big boy. And they throw bombs. I just feel like 15-1, 6-0, like 16-6 fights, it's going to show. Especially for debuting fighters. So, like, I don't feel like them being acclimated to the cage or to the UFC or to the pressure is even going to matter. They're both coming in on their debut, and I just strongly feel like Fiore is going to get knocked the fuck out. So I'm going with Matuesz Rebecki by first or second round TKO or just flat out KO. Right now, I feel like we're climbing even faster because a lot of these fights, it's getting a lot easier to pick, oddly enough, even though we're going further up the card. Well, I guess that makes sense. More competitive. Anyways, we've got our prelim headliner. And this one, if this goes past the first round, that's going to be something. We're going to be in for some fireworks because we've got two power bombing strikers in the middleweight division. First off, we've got Claudio Ribeiro taking on Abdul Razak Alhassan. Man, if Abdul was more consistent in his career to this point, I feel like it'd be an easy pick for me because he's definitely more tested. But Claudio Ribeiro, man, like, he has that it factor, I feel like. He's one of these people that I feel like could easily blow up if he gets, you know, a spectacular finish on Saturday night in this fight. It's so up in the air for me. I've been 50-50 all week. First day I was leaning Abdul Razak Alhassan, then Ribeiro, and it's just been back and forth. I'm still so like 51-49 on it, but I think I'm going to have to go with Abdul Razak Alhassan. I just trust his experience in the cage, and I'm hoping that he can show up on point and make my prediction correct, because I'm really not trying to take any L's on this shit tonight. But yeah, no, I think that one should be easy. Middleweight, fucking banger, should be only a round. It should really help bring us into the main card and kick that night off. Definitely going with Abdul Razak Alhassan right now. It might change. Fucking 2 seconds before the fight, I might be looking at him in the cage, staring each other down, and I might be like, damn, I'm going with Ribeiro. But on paper, this is my prediction. Now we can finally get into the main card. Alright, kicking off the main card, we've got probably my most anticipated fight, maybe besides the main event. I don't know, it might even be more anticipated than the main event. We've got Umar Nurmagomedov taking on Raoni Barcelos, who 2 years ago was my, like, to look out for prospect. Probably in the whole UFC, definitely in all of bantamweight. Because he's talented. But he's had some ups and downs in the octagon, to be honest. He lost to, Victor Henry, who turned out to be not even, like, that good of a fighter. Must have just really had Raoni's number that day. But, I mean, shit, he has 17 wins, only 3 losses, versus Umar, who I believe is at 15-0, 16-0. You know, continuing the family last name with that undefeated record, just dominant fights as well. And to be honest, I am going to be picking Umar in this fight. But if Raoni's on, it could really go either way. Raoni Barcelos has all of the skills. He's like a new age Jose Aldo, I feel like. Like he's more athletic. He has probably better ground game. Definitely not better takedown defense, but it can get there. You know, he's young in his career. It's just the problem, man. Umar has the kicks. He has that insane wrestling. And even with Khabib, like, not in his corner and all that, his team is good enough. He's good enough. He's been around greatness his whole life. I don't usually like to I don't like to suck off the Middle Eastern fighters because I feel like they get that enough from the MMA fan base. But they do get it for a reason. Like, they are damn good. So for this one, I'm going to have to be going with Umar by a decision. I can't really see a finish unless he wears him out and gets a sub. Definitely not a TKO. If anybody's getting a knockout, it's Raoni. I would assume so. I mean, shit, this could be my famous last words, but yeah, no, I'm going to be going with Umar. Moving on up the card, we've got the second fight of the main card, and probably the only boring one. Ketlen Vieira taking on Raquel Pennington in the bantamweight division, and Pennington has the same type of record as, like, Shayna Dobson. Those types of fighters, like, just very, very hit or miss. And when she shows up, she's good. She's scrappy, you know. She has decent wrestling, decent ground game in general, but I'm going with Ketlen Vieira on this. Like, I don't feel like there's much to say on it. It's probably going to be a decision, maybe a sub. I really can't see a TKO unless some weird shit happens, like a fucking up kick to the liver, because that's the type of shit that be happening nowadays. But I feel like it's going to be a dominant, unanimous decision. Probably pretty close at the beginning, but I just feel like Ketlen Vieira is going to take it away. But yeah, alright. Now it's no more boring fights at all on the card, even though so far it's been pretty good. It's only been like 1 or 2. Both the women's fights, coincidentally enough. But moving on up the card, feature fight of the card. Punahele Soriano taking on Roman Kopylov. They both have the same record. They're both at the same spots in their career in the UFC. Had some ups and downs. They look promising as prospects in middleweight. Another one that I feel like is just easy to predict, though. I feel like it's going to be Punahele. Like, I feel like you need a lot better ground game. Like, what was Nick Diaz's friend? You need ground game like that to really be able to fuck up Punahele Soriano. Because he's also a state champion wrestler, I believe, from Hawaii. But I could be wrong. I don't know. I just remember when I was wrestling in high school, I heard a lot about Puna. I had a coach or something that either worked with him or competed against him. I don't know. But he had only great things to say about him, and I've seen his footage on the mat. He's an athletic guy, and he goes for that shit. Now you combine that with those fucking swimming shark hooks he likes to throw, and his power, and you've got a dangerous, dangerous young prospect. He also has a chin and he has heart. Roman Kopylov probably has all of these things as well, even though we haven't seen it tested to the same extent. But I just feel like he doesn't have the ground game, and I don't think his stand-up is good enough to take Punahele out before Puna gets on top of him and establishes some control or just starts fucking raining down hammers. So I'm going with Puna by a second or third round TKO. I feel like that's most likely, but it could be a decision too, honestly. Now we're down to our last 2 fights of the card, and we got a pretty solid co-main event, in my opinion. I think it used to be a lot better. One of the fights that got canceled was a co-main event. I don't remember what it was. Oh, Jeff Neal versus Shavkat. It sucks that fell out. But you know what? This one is not that bad. We've got, Damon Jackson versus Dan Ige at featherweight. And this one is a toss-up for me. Like, this is another one of the really hard fights on the card. Basically a pick-em for me. Because if Dan Ige had shown better fight IQ in his last fight. Like, he just lost to Korean Zombie not that long ago. And Zombie's clearly, like, he's not at the top anymore. He's just not. So I feel like Dan Ige has, like, a ceiling that doesn't even break the top 10 of featherweights, honestly, because featherweight is stacked. And Damon Jackson, he has that type of, like, smothering pressure game fight style and game plan that I feel like he's just going to go in there and grind him out. But then that being said, Dan Ige has the wrestling background. I believe he's a collegiate wrestler too. Maybe just high school. I don't know, but I know he has some credentials on the ground, and you can tell because he moves like he's good at scrambling, and it comes naturally to him. And he has that fucking power, dude. I don't remember who it was that he flatlined, but it was another upcoming prospect, and I believe he was undefeated or like only had a loss, and he took him out in like 10 seconds with one punch, maybe less. So it's so difficult. Like, I really want to lead towards Dan Ige, but then I also really like Damon Jackson. Like, I feel like he could get this done. He definitely has the skills too. But if Dan Ige shows up, I feel like it's Ige's fight to win. So I'm going to be going with Dan Ige by either a TKO or a decision. Probably more likely that it's going to be a decision. And I know it's kind of cheating that I keep saying this or that. Kind of stealing from Guru here. But, yeah, no, I'm going to have to do that for this one. So I'm going to be going with Dan Ige. And now moving up to the main event. The most anticipated fight on the card. Even more hyped up because it's short notice. Sean Strickland taking on Nassourdine Imavov. Middleweight. Or actually, no, it's going to be at light heavyweight. Because Strickland can't make the weight that quickly. That's fine. That's whatever. He saved the card, so I'm good with it. And to be honest, at first I was going Nassourdine because Sean's not going to have the conditioning that he would have had if he had a full fight card. But then he also just fought 5 rounds. I thought he won personally, 3 rounds to 2. But he lost. But either way, he got that fight experience, and that was like the last fight night. I'm pretty sure he's the first fighter in UFC history to be headlining 2 fight nights back to back. I don't know for sure, and I know that Davison did. He was on a pay-per-view and then he headlined a pay-per-view, but that's not the same thing. It's badass, but it's not the same thing. I think Sean's the first person to be headlining back to back, so that's pretty fucking cool. And honestly, like, I'm a fan of Sean. I'm a fan of that brash personality. I don't agree with most of the shit he says, but he's a damn good fighter, and I love that his way of articulating himself and his way of going about who he is almost like tricks fighters into thinking that he's gonna be something that he's not, when in reality he's like a cerebral fighter. Like, he's like a jab, fucking walk backwards or walk you down, jabbing you in the face, fucking smart fighter. He's not at all like what his personality would suggest, which is funny. But you know, on paper Nassourdine has better cage control. He's got better striking, like more technical striking. Probably hits harder. Probably has better ground game overall. Maybe not necessarily wrestling, but definitely submissions. And I don't know, I just feel like he has that like it factor. Like, he feels like he's the fucking shit. He feels like he's the man. And it translates into the octagon. But it's so hard for me to go against Sean Strickland when he's fighting this type of matchup. Because I just feel like Sean at 185 fully conditioned for this, I feel like he whoops Nassoudine's ass. I feel like the first 2 rounds, maybe the third, are the only difficult parts of the fight for him. Just because of the way his style is. Pressure heavy, he's one of the best counter grapplers in the whole division just because of the way his style is. And he spars 24/7, so he's always in the feel of what a real cage fight's going to be like. So I see it play dividends against pretty much everybody except the elite of the elite, like Alex Pereira type of strikers. Even against, you know, Cannonier, who's amazing in his own right and a great cerebral striker, was having a lot of trouble. He lost that fight in most people's eyes, I feel like, or in a lot of people's eyes. But yeah, so, I mean, with all of this playing in, I just feel like Sean Strickland, it's his fight to lose. As long as he has his conditioning, and even though he's going to be overweight a little bit, I don't think he's going to be carrying too much fat, and I think he's consistent enough in practice and whatnot that it's not going to really affect how he fights. Like, I just feel like he's going to be like Michael Bisping type of 205er. You know what I mean? Like, when Mike was at a higher weight, it didn't really, you could tell that he's carrying more weight on him, but really all it did was make it so his punches were a little bit stronger, and you know, he's a little bit heavier, so he could defend some grappling better. Like, that's how I feel like it's going to translate for Sean with that jab heavy style. So I have to go with Sean Strickland, honestly. Like, I could see him, especially since he's at a heavier weight, and the last time he was at lightweight against Brendan Allen, he got his first finish in like a long ass time. I could see that being the case again. I could see history repeating itself, and Sean being up at 205 actually helps him with his power, helps him with his, I don't know, him doing the man dance, as he says. I feel like this is Sean's fight to win, for sure. So I'm going to be going with Sean Strickland by a close decision. Maybe another split. Maybe this one goes his way. Maybe a UD. I don't fucking know. I should, though, because I'm the person that's supposed to be giving you guys that info. But yeah, no, I'm going with Sean. And I really fucking hope it happens, because that'd be a good way to bounce back from that weak-ass loss he took in December. And start off the new year, honestly, because it was looking bad with like 3 solid-ass fights being pulled off this card. That's all I really got. I'm your host, I9s. See you guys at the fights. See how that shit goes, and then, you know, I'll be back here to wrap up and talk about how my predictions did. So yeah, I'll catch y'all.